a minute or two, kind of introduce yourselves and whatever opening statement, comments you want to make. Mayor, since you're the incumbent, I'm going to invite you to go first.
Okay. First of all, thank you for setting this up. I appreciate this opportunity. As the mayor of the city, of course, you know I've been working extremely hard for the last 4 years to try and turn a city around that has been in a hole for almost 50 years. It's been just one chaotic situation after another. And so my goal has been always to do that with teamwork, collaboration, cooperation, working across party line, working across all the racial lines, the age lines. I should say work across all the lines, because if we don't, we are not going to be able to pull the city out of the hole it's been in. And so I've been focused on 3 things primarily: police, cleaning it up, and economic development. And those 3 things have had success in each direction. So I'm really running on the platform that we are making progress. We started down in the hole, and it's not going to get done in a few years. It's not going to get done immediately because we have a long way to go. But I believe strongly that we're headed in the right direction, and that we need to keep the stability of the city as it is. We need to keep our city manager and not flip that around again. We need to support our new police chief and keep moving forward. And so that has been really the focus that I have had. There's a lot to do. I see Newburgh. I see the wonderful, great potential of Newburgh, first of all. And so I've really been focused on delivering to that potential. And I think we've been making progress in that, and I'm excited to keep going forward and making that progress. We have what I call the little plants up about this high right now, and we need to keep watering and nurturing them so that they actually develop into fruition.
Great, thank you. Jacobson?
Let me tell you why I decided to run. I decided to run because of 3 people. 3 people I didn't know: Jewel Cummings, Robert Richardson, and James Patterson. These were the 3 people that died on Lander Street due to no carbon monoxide detectors, due to lack of code enforcement, on the same street that Judy Kennedy had property that was not up to code. And then I investigated further that that house was terrible. It wasn't boarded up. It wasn't in the condition it should be in. And I investigated further that on a neighboring street where a house collapsed, and thank God nobody got killed, Judy Kennedy had property that was not up to code, has been reported by the Record. So I'm running on code enforcement. I investigated further that in 2013, Judy Kennedy and the council decided to pass a landlord registry law, but they decided not to enforce it until after the people died, and I started raising these issues. In fact, Judy Kennedy didn't register as a landlord. It's just so unbelievable. And so what I'm running on is that my feeling is, just like Middletown, we have to get our act together. We have to do the basics in order that we can promote the city properly. We have to enforce the code, or nobody's going to want to buy a house if down the street it's not being kept up to code. We have to fix the streets and the infrastructure. If you're going to bring a business in and you break a front axle on the way to the site, you're not coming back. And we have to keep the taxes stable. All right? Now, I'm sure the mayor's going to say that she lowered by 4 cents a thousand in the proposed budget that was out last night. But if she wants to take credit for that, then she has to take credit for the tax increases over the last 3 years, which were 23%, which I have right here. Because in 2011, it was 15.6358. In 2014, 19.2268 per thousand. So you can't have it both ways. I think Newburgh can do better. That's why I'm running. But I have a major difference, even beyond that, even beyond the fact that the mayor took $1,000 from the Landlord Association when she ran the first time and is a landlord. My difference is philosophy. I don't believe the mayor in our form of government should be just there for ribbon cutting about things that have nothing to do with it. My job as mayor, as head of the council, is oversight of the executive branch. I'm not there. I don't care what the tire pressure is in the garbage trucks, but they have to pick up the garbage. What I'm saying is we haven't been doing the basics, and we have to have oversight to hold the city manager and the department heads accountable.
Okay. Good. Plenty of opportunity. I'm going to start with the first question. In August, 8 people were shot in the city of Newburgh, including a 67-year-old Samuel Stubbs, who was playing cards outside with friends on a warm summer night. No arrests have been made. People have been shot in their legs. We had a 13-year-old girl who was shot just walking the street. At a community forum not soon after that, the new police chief, Dan Cameron, said the shootings are still behind last year's pace. He said bullet-to-body shooting totals of 26 this year compared to 34 same time last year, and he said that they are making progress. Mayor, you mentioned also about making progress. I'm sure if we were to talk to the family of Samuel Stubbs or to these victims, they would say that there isn't any progress. Is the city making progress in these shootings?
Well, first I'd like to say, for the people who have been shot, that certainly doesn't look like progress. And for the family of Mr. Stubbs, you know, there's deep regret for that. And for any person that's being shot, as our chief has said, one person getting killed is one too many, right? And we have to look at the fact that when I came into office, Newburgh was labeled the murder capital of New York. We are no longer the murder capital of New York. So the statistics are moving in the right direction. We are not there. We are a long way from being there. This city has been in a hole for so long, and in fact, our police department hasn't had the resources, and it also hasn't had the processes. What has changed dramatically since Chief Cameron came in is community policing. And so it is with regret that Mr. Stubbs was killed. And by the way, we cannot do this alone. There are people in our community, and I'm going to say this straight out to everybody. I hope it gets in there. There are people in our community who know who shot Mr. Stubbs. They know that. But, you know, there's a saying on the street, those who snitch get stitches. And so we really have to be able to put together a protection process, and we need to work with our people, our citizens, to help the police so that we can solve these crimes. And keep going. We have to keep going. We need to make sure that community policing is in effect. We need to make sure that our police, they have the resources. So body cameras are now being put in place. Street cameras we're working on. We have to stay focused. This is one of the key things that I have said that's going to make the city turn around is safety. Safety is a #1 issue. So we must keep going as far as this is concerned. And we're not there yet. I'm going to acknowledge and recognize that. But we're doing the things that are absolutely necessary to make sure that we do move in that direction and we get there. And I pray we find who killed Mr. Stubbs and the others. These kids getting shot, they're shooting each other. We must do gun control, right? I'm a strong fan of taking away the guns. The police took away 71 guns last year with no incident from these kids that are all over the street. So we've got to do something. Gun violence is completely out of control as far as I'm concerned, and as far as the police are concerned.
Judy, you've been running on crime. You've been citing statistics about crime going down. But your statistics only go into the beginning of this year. Since May 1st, we've had four murders. That's a 400% increase. So if you want to take credit, you want to take ownership of statistics, you want to, pick and choose what statistics, then you take ownership of the 400% increase of the murders this year. What has to be done is, and I've been talking about this from the beginning of my campaign, the scrounge of illegal guns is incredible. And we have to talk about it, and we have to have coalitions. We have to have coalitions with other cities throughout the state and national government. We have to, look, you can't do it by just passing local laws. There has to be a national law. But you have to speak out on it. You have to get the cooperation of the public. And I think I can do that. And I think that what will happen is, and you're right, I hear talk all along who might have shot. Why don't the police? You sure the police don't know about it? Why aren't they following up on that? There are people that talk. Now, I still think that crime is a major thing. I'm not running on that. I'm not trying to demagogue that. I'm not trying to say, oh, crime is great or crime is bad, because there's inherent problems of crime, and you have to go beyond. But you know, if you're in a concrete jungle, people act that way. But if you improve the area, if you improve the code enforcement, if you improve the environment that people live in, the streets, and people can walk on the sidewalk, if you improve it, that changes things. If you start having bulk pickup, you don't take that away. You have vacant lots, that so many vacant houses, and that becomes a dump. You know, you've got to do these things to change the environment, to change the problems of crime. There's no excuse that poverty or circumstance is an excuse for crime, but that is a problem that we have to, it's all tied together. And you can't run on your lower crime statistics if you don't include the murder
Did I
statistics.
understand you to say you think police are not following up? You said police are not following up. What did you mean by that?
What I'm saying is just what Judy just said.
No, I'm asking what you said. You
I-
said police are not following up on information they have on the shooting.
I'm saying is that there is out there rumors on who
Right.
killed, right, and that's what,
Are you saying you said police are not following up?
well, there've been no arrests, that's all I can tell you.
Okay, so you're not saying they're not following, okay.
I-
I don't know. I'm trying to go, that's a fairly serious charge to a police department.
All I'm saying is that I do not know why there's been no arrests, it's
Well,
been a
no one
long
does.
time.
Again,
So I just
do
hope,
you know that they are consciously not following up?
of course
in
not,
your terms?
I would never say that, I don't have
did say
inside
that.
information, no. No,
You-
what I,
though I wrote down, you said police are not following up.
I said, if it's
No,
out
you
there,
said police are not following up. That's my question. Do you stand by that, or do you not stand by that?
no, what I'm.
You said police are not following
No,
up.
what I'm saying is that it appears that, first of all, there's been no arrests,
We know that.
all right? There's a lot of rumors out there on who
We know
did
that.
things. So what I'm saying is these things have to be followed up on. So all I'm saying is my main, look, no, I'm not gonna say they're not following up, because
You
I
did.
don't know what they're doing
Okay.
on a day-to-day basis.
Okay, just because that's a fairly serious charge. for
But
a
that's
police
what people,
department.
but there's a lot, but I'm telling you, that's what people think. That's what people think
Who
out
thinks
there.
that?
People in Newburgh, citizens, they wanna know how come there've been no arrests.
You also, you mentioned, we'll go back, are we really gonna connect bulk pickup to guns on the street? I mean, what
course
is,
not.
right?
Of course not.
How do we
Of course not.
how do we take away the guns?
How you take away the guns? Well, you gotta do a lot of things. You have to, the gun buybacks are good, but you can't do it every so often. You have to, I think you have to start enforcing the trafficking of guns. You have to make it a priority. You have to get the word out that if you report something that's going on that's wrong, whether it's guns or drugs, you're not going to be considered a suspect. I hear that a lot. People complain that if they call the police and they complain about things going on, right away they think, you know, they're worried about getting involved, that they're going to be accused. So I think there has to be the type of cooperation that people feel confident that they can call, they can do, they can be there. I think we have to enlist the churches and other organizations to fight crime, and that has to be done. So, look, illegal guns, one of the worst problems in this whole country. You need a national law, and you need it enforced. You can't, the guns come from South Carolina or Texas, and they come up here. But you have to but you have to do everything. You have to speak about it. You have to make coalitions. You have to get it done.
You've had a couple of years now working on this, and doesn't seem to be getting, you know, I mean, you can say that you may not have the title, but certainly the perception and the reality to some degree, as the shootings are still going on, so.
So I'm really glad to talk about this subject, because I think it's an extremely important one. And safety is a number one issue. And as we make the city safer, all kinds of things will begin to resolve in the city, because people will come in, we'll have economic development, a lot of things happen. And so I would like to ask my colleague here, what does he mean by a 400% increase? 4 murders, or is a 400% increase over what?
The year before, there were no murders the year before. Now there's a 400%, now there's 4 murders. What I'm saying is.
There were 12 murders in 2012. So we have, in fact, begun to drive the statistics down.
If you want to start claiming the statistics and use that as the reason as one of the reasons you should get reelected, then you're going to have to take the bad with the possible good. That's all I'm saying.
So
There were no murders last year, and you're claiming that violence is down. That's all.
So let me go back to your question, which we've been working with the governor's office. He sends a whole coalition down every month, the last Monday of each month, and we're working with something called the Community Opportunity Revitalization Initiative, CORE, C-O-R. And one of the key components of that is crime and the stats. And so as we have begun to organize this, we are just now releasing this ceasefire program where the police are working. Actually, the statistics from the Department of Justice, Juvenile Justice, really recognize that there are a very small number of people creating most of the crimes, the issues. And so the police actually know who most of those people are, and they're going to the youth and to these group leaders. And I don't want to call them gangs, because then people start associating them with a national gang issue. It's these local groups that have formed to sort of run their area, and the police are going with them going to them and saying, listen, we're going to provide social services, we're going to provide counseling, we'll work at job training, we'll work with your family if you want to get out of this group and work with us. We will help you. But if you do not want to get out of the group, then we're going to really come down hard. So you have a choice to go here or to go there. And that has been known as ceasefire about 20 years ago. It was a fairly successful program then, and it ran out of funding. And so this is an initiative that's just now launching, along with putting up, the body cameras on the police, along with the more street lighting and street cameras. So there is a whole several-pronged initiative coming to try and deal with this gun violence that's on the street, and these young kids that seem to be driving so much of that. It's a territorial fight. I think you may know that. It's a territorial fight over whose territory and what people are, going to take. And so we have really got to work with this on a holistic basis. It's not just about guns, it's about kids needing to feel significant in their environment, and violence is the number one way to feel significant. It's about young men needing jobs, it's about families needing resources. We have got to move this in a new direction, and just making arrests isn't going to do that. We had an FBI agent here about 4 years ago who said, we're not going to arrest our way out of this, and I agree with that. So it's a complete program that we've got to put together. We've got it together. We've been working on it for almost a year with the governor's office, and I believe we need to stay the course. And we've got a police chief now that is just bent on linking the police and the community. He's got little kids going through police vans and shaking hands, and we got one police officer who's actually doing barbecues on the street at 1:30 at night in some of the toughest places of Newburgh. Those are the kinds of things that are going to begin to integrate the police back into Newburgh, back into the community, and have our community then feel safe enough to share information. Now they know Officer so-and-so, and they will share information. And that goes along, by the way, with that is the YPI program, the Youth Police Initiative, where they're working on that. I think there's been about 8 or 9 classes go through now. They take a group of young people and work with them for a week, and then the police and the young people begin to know each other. And we've had at least 2 situations where the police walked up, and here's a big crowd of kids on the street, and the rumble's starting to happen. And here's the kid who's been through YPI, and he says, hey, wait a minute, I know that police officer. He's a good guy. And everybody just kind of chills down at that point.
Leonard? Question or?
Well, I think, because a lot of this stuff I already know, and
Yeah.
I think, I guess the one question I have, and certainly with all the violence, is just how do we because, you know, there's this big shadow. There's, you know, all municipalities are dealing with the whole, the money issue, and I think it's aggravated in Newburgh because, I mean, you've got, I think Chief Adder was saying, you know, the number of vacancies is probably, you know, a tenth of the housing stock in the city. So that's a lot of money that's off the table.
Right.
I mean, how do you get the police the resources they need? I mean, you're negotiating a contract, and frankly, the starting salary for a police officer in Newburgh, I mean, they're the busiest department in our jurisdiction, and yet you've got officers who, rightfully so, I mean, leave for places where they do a lot less work for a lot more money. And I mean, how do you get them the resources they need? And, you know, in the context of the financial situation that the city's in.
Are you asking that to me or
frankly,
to?
I mean, and I guess to both of you, and you can
Okay.
take your turns. And frankly, you know, you're negotiating a new contract with them. I mean,
Right.
Well,
I mean, frankly, I think it's safe to say these guys are probably due for a raise.
Mayor?
Okay.
Yeah.
I
you want
would
me
look
to-
at him.
Go ahead. Whatever you say.
I think it's a real, what I call rock and a hard place discussion, because one of the key issues, safety is a huge issue. We need the police officers, and we need to pay them, and we need to keep the taxes from going up. We need both of those things, and they're both equally important, because if the taxes go up, then you're going to have more people walking away from properties and more vacancies, right, that create more trouble. So you can't raise the taxes. That's just absolutely not a possibility. And I do need to go back to that subject, but I'm not going to do that right this minute. So with the police officers, our goal has been to work with our state and our federal officials. We've got the GIVE grant going on. We've got state money coming behind us. We've got money helping us. We've got citizens helping us, you know, with cameras and things like that. So it's a huge dilemma that we face to try and pay our officers more, to try and work with them. We're really trying to work with a lot of things in the house, and there's a few of us on the council that are trying to figure out how to give them more incentive to actually be in the city. So it's not an easy question, and I'm not going to even begin to say that it is, because, you know, there's a lot of them. One of them is to try and get local police, police from our local area, from the city, that actually have a passion for the city. And we've been much more successful in doing that. In our last round, we had all local folks that came in, right? And so they have a real heart for our citizens and have a heart for the city and are more likely to stay put and work with us. And so that's been some of the way in which we're dealing with this very difficult situation.
Well, that doesn't answer the question about the finances. Look, what we're going to have to do, and this whether it's police, whether it's the streets, whether it's code enforcement, we're going to have to get money from the state and federal government. There's no question about it. And that's where I can do a better job. Now, I've been disparaged by my opponent for being active in politics, for being county Democratic chairman for 22 years. But I've developed contacts throughout the state and federal government that's going to make it easier to lobby and get money for Newburgh. As I said, I don't need a name tag when I go to Albany or Washington. They know me. I've already been talking. That's why I've been endorsed by Assemblyman Frank Skratatis and Congressman Sean Patrick Maloney. I'm endorsed by Chuck Schumer and Senator Joe O'Brien. What's going to happen is I'm going to be able to use my contacts that I've had to help lobby, and that's what we're going to have to do. We're going to have to get additional money from the state and the federal government, and that's what we're going to have to do. We can't do it by raising taxes on the backs of the citizens here. 70% of the people here, they rent, and 30% own, and we have to try to change that. But we can't do it by raising taxes. We have to get it from the federal and the state
And what
governments.
happens if you don't get it? I
What's
mean,
it?
both of you talked about, but neither one really answered the question. You've got police that haven't had raises in about 9 years, and the answer is, well, we're going to get money from the state and the federal government. That's not a lock.
And you're in negotiations now, and you're proposing a tax reduction. how much of an increase is budgeted in this reduction?
Actually, the truth of the matter is that we are in conversations. We have just finished a CSEA contract and the fire department contract. We're in those same negotiations, following that same trajectory with our police department. We hope to be able to give them some raise as well.
And that's incorporated into the budget?
Yes, that is incorporated in the budget right now. And I want to just say this issue, as far as context is concerned, I have had, in just 4 short years, very good relationships with the governor, by the way, we got the Attorney General working with us directly, got us $4 million for our land bank to start working on these properties. He and I have worked, and I'm working with his office on a regular monthly basis to do that. Working with all of our representatives. Worked with Sean Patrick Maloney to get the SAFER grant. We have been working with grant management. So grants are one piece of the puzzle, right? But it's no guarantee. And we live from grant to grant to grant. We have to get out of that situation. And we're not there yet. I'm not here promising something that you can't. I don't like making promises like that. So what I can tell you is that I already have these good relationships with the Attorney General's office, with DiNapoli, our comptroller. This city was a week and a half from bankruptcy in 2009. We laid off 100 people. We are crawling out of that financial hole slowly but surely, keeping things stable. We are not there yet, folks. We have a long way to go, but we are getting up out of a financial hole. And that happened because people did not understand the taxes or the budget or how to manage money. And it's an extreme, I think from a background perspective, one of the things I bring to the table that is most important is that I understand how to manage a big budget. That's my background, that's my corporate background. I've been doing it for years. And in terms of working with our federal officials, as an international consultant for Hewlett-Packard, I've worked with the best of them, with CEOs of very large corporations. I know how to sit down to the table, talk business, and lay out the paperwork.
John?
Well, let's talk about this. There's a lot of things that are said that you get with the incumbency. They're nice to you, you see them, and so forth. But I want to know something. When the land bank got established and the Attorney General come in, did you tell him that you had property on this that was going to be affected by the land bank? Did you tell him that? And why is it that, I think what we have to do, though, is we have to take a new attitude towards how the council manages the city. And there has to be the oversight, and there isn't. There isn't the oversight on the code enforcement. There isn't the oversight on the streets. And this is where we have to go. Now, you took $1,000 4 years ago from the Landlord Association, and now they're suing. They're suing to get out of a law that you didn't even want to enforce, and now finally started to enforce, that was in today's paper. They're suing. Are you disavowing now the landlords that are backing you because you're a fellow landlord? These are the things that are holding us back. And what we have to do is we have to change what we're doing in the city. We have to start doing the basics. They have a landlord registry here in Middletown. I called up Joe, good friend, Joe DiStefano, the mayor here. I asked, what do you do with it? Yeah, he said, we collect the fees and we have inspections every year. How do you do it? Well, he says, we just do it. A lot of these things are common sense. You have to do it. It's known as the Nike plan. You know what that is? Just do it. And that's what we have to do, and we're not doing those things. They weren't spending the CHIPS money for the streets. That wasn't being done. And so there was money that was built up, it wasn't used, and now there's this, I hope, look, all I can say is that I've been raising these issues since May. And all of a sudden now, these things are starting to be talked about by this mayor. All of a sudden, she's talking about code enforcement, even though it wasn't done and her property wasn't kept up to code. Now we're talking about streets. And I'm glad to see that some of these things in the press advisory, because I didn't get the budget yet to look at it, some of these things are reflective of my campaign. That's what's happened. The whole release last night was reflective of my campaign, which I'm happy about, because that means things are going to be better. But we have to start getting our act together, and we haven't had that. People want to get their act together. They want to keep the taxes stable. They want to have the infrastructure and the code enforced. You have to do that.
Ken?
Landlords, what role should landlords play in the city? You've talked about landlords a couple of times now, yeah.
Landlords are in there to make money. That's great. They're 70% of Newburgh rents.
Right.
They have to keep the property up to code.
Right.
And that's their responsibility. All right? If Judy's going to start talking about the tenants. Look, if the tenants are not complying with the terms of the lease agreement, they can be evicted. It's as simple as that. But you have to do that. You cannot have the code enforcement being ignored. I mean, my God. I mean, this was Judy Kennedy's property. It wasn't even boarded up, the one on Lander Street. And worse than that, in March of this year, Judy owned 74 Lander Street. 72 Lander Street was sold to a developer. She did not recuse herself. She abstained from that vote, even though the record said she voted for it. But she did not recuse, and to say, the record in the minutes, not the record. And what happened was that she did not disclose, as required by the Code of Ethics, what the conflict was. And there was more than one conflict. It was a conflict that not only was it next door that she owned the property, but at the same time, Judy was negotiating with the same person who took it under a different LLC and sold her property. The deed, just so that nobody would know about it, apparently was dated March 31st and wasn't recorded to June. You can't have backroom deals like that. You can't have this double dealing. That's why there's lack of confidence in the government. People think that the only people, that they're in there for their own good. And the landlords have responsibility to keep the property up to code, and that's what they're supposed to do. And you don't start enforcing the law 2 years afterwards. And how come you didn't sign up? If they had passed a law on who was wearing a blue suit with a blue striped tie, I would have signed up the first day if they passed it today. She didn't pass it. She didn't sign up. This was passed in June of 2013, and it was ignored. It was ignored. Now, maybe it's just a natural conflict because Judy's a landlord, or maybe it's a conflict because she believes in that and she was supported by the landlords. But I don't know what it is, but we have to have code enforcement.
Okay, there's kind of two issues here. One is Judy's property itself. The other is landlords I'm talking about. How would you get, you seem to think that landlords are a problem in Newburgh.
Yes.
Okay. What would you do to make that problem go away?
I would enforce it. I would enforce the law better, and I would bring actions. Here's what you have to do. Most of the violations are for $200 a day. All right. So let's say you find there's something there and you take a picture of it and you tell the landlord, fix it. All right. I'm telling you, this is on code enforcement.
Let's just start with who is going to do the enforcement. How are they going to get the evidence? You talk about doing this. I'm wondering what the mechanism is to do that.
The fire department and the code enforcement people,
right.
and it's prosecuted by the Assistant Corporation Counsel.
Okay.
That's what's done now. And what happens is this: if you have a problem and the fine is $250 a day, right? And you tell them to fix it, and they ignore it. And then say by 30 days go by, you now have it been for 30 days.
Right.
You don't say, I'm going to go after you for $250. You say, I'm going to go after you for $7,500. And then they'll say, oh, I'm going to make a deal. Yeah, I'll pay you $1,000 and I'll get it fixed. You have to be aggressive on these things. It can't be right now, they say, hey, you know something? If they come by, I don't do it, I lose $250, I don't care. But so you've got to put the teeth, the laws are there, but you got to enforce it. You have to want to enforce it. You have to not have the attitude that if they enforce it on one part of the street, they're going to come down and look at my property. And that's the problem. That's the problem, because she was faulted.
Do they have the personnel to do that?
They have some, not enough. But I think you have to use more, and you have to be creative and use more. I think it can be done. I would try to be creative and be done. And I would say, just like when somebody asks a question to a lawyer, there's an old saying, and this would be the same with department heads. If you ask a lawyer, can you do something, the lawyer will find out why you can't do it. If you ask a lawyer, how can I do it, the lawyer will find out a way to get it done. It's a matter of attitude, and it's a matter of priority, and whether or not you really want to get it done.
Code enforcement takes resources, people, and money.
And the most important thing, more than all that, is commitment. There hasn't been the commitment to get it done.
So the people that are responsible for it now are not doing it?
They're not getting it done.
It's those departments that are not doing it, or someone's just saying, don't do this?
I say it's not getting done, and the council, including the leadership, the so-called leaders, Judy Kennedy, is not saying get it done.
And why do you think that is?
Because it's not being done.
Now, why do you think she and the council is not pushing for this to get done?
Why? I can only speculate, but I think perhaps it's that Judy is a landlord herself, number one. Number two, she was backed by the landlord association. And she thinks that I don't want to be tough on them because it's going to hurt the economy. They're not going anyplace, these landlords. They're going to want to stay there. They make money there. So you're going to have to ask her why it isn't being done.
Let me ask you the question regarding that.
Well, first of all, I think I need to get a few things straight, because a lot of things are being said here. Number one, in 2011, when I ran for election and landlords donated money to me, I was not a landlord, nor did I have any intention of being a landlord at that time. There was no connection between me and landlords in 2011 when I ran and accepted a donation from it's just another donation from another organization. That's it. End of story. In 2013, I became an accidental landlord, and actually I'm going to say a property owner, when my son's business partner really screwed him over, for the lack of a better word, and I stepped in to help my son. Simple. I stepped in to help my son in 2013, and we began immediately to start and figure out the problems that had happened. The first step was to figure out what to do with 74 Lander. My question to him was, why on earth did you buy it? And he said, I never saw it. My partner bought it. I didn't know what I bought. So, I looked around for people that would want to do that. I talked to several people. There was no backroom deals. I just asked several people, you are interested in this property? And one of them was, and I said, great, here, you can buy it for $500 and pay all the city taxes. What he did was make the city whole. I did what I think is a responsible thing to do. The guy paid the city's taxes, the back water bills and those sort of things. He took the property, and in the end, he's going to renovate 6 properties in a row and make the city a better place. I think that's a great deal for the city. And it got my son out of a big mess. That was in 2013, and then we immediately set to work on the other 2 properties to bring them up to code. They're up to code now. I did, I think, what any mother would do. And so I try to follow the codes. As far as the code's concerned, by the way, when we passed the registry, we all were wanting to get the landlords moving on this process and get things done. We had a city manager at the time that wasn't getting anything done. We need to connect the dots here. So we were dealing with temporary city managers, one after another, if you recall correctly. And at that time, things were just one after another in holding pattern, not just landlord registry. You need to know a whole lot of things were not getting done in this city manager flip-flop over and over and over. One of the reasons we hired a city manager and got that in place was to start getting something done. And one of the things he did, remember, he came last May, so let's get the timing straight. So as these things begin, and he's trying to figure his way through what's going on and what's happening in the city. The timing of this is unfortunate. The people who died in that carbon monoxide situation was a very unfortunate thing, and my heart goes out to the people that and their families. Remember, this was a owner-occupied rental. And the owner simply passed away in December, and things were not being managed then from the owner's perspective. And so as the codes folks actually did show up about 2 weeks before this happened, and they were not let in the door, and unfortunately there was a terrible price that was paid. You wrote an article about that, if I recall correctly. So there's a very, there's a timing problem here with this, and I'm very sad that these people lost their lives in this situation. What I'm sadder about is that my opponent has taken this very unfortunate situation and tried to make it a political mess and throw that all back on me, as the city is just ramping up to try and enforce codes, work with the landlords, work with the tenants to try and move forward. We've created a big political brouhaha over something that these folks didn't need to have over their deaths. I'm really sorry about it.
The house was inspected as you said, 2 weeks before.
It's about 2 weeks.
About 2 weeks.
Approximately.
They weren't allowed in, and then the code enforcement folks just went away, and there was no follow-up. And that was the frustrating thing, that these deaths probably could have been prevented if there was a greater push to get into the places. What do you do to change that?
I think what we have to do, they can't just go in. So we're going to, you have to have the police. You have to have a reason to go in. You cannot just open the door and go in, right? Codes cannot do that. That's not legal. That's called search and seizure, right? You can't just walk in somebody's house. So they have to have a legal warrant or a legal something document, right, to just go in. So at this stage of the game, where do they go? What do they do if the folks don't let them in and the owner is not there that they can contact? That was the dilemma they faced. The owner was not to be had. The tenants wouldn't let them in. And so do they go to the police? And by the way, this isn't the only issue. People are calling them all the time. Expect this one, then that one. They're doing that all day long. So they had no idea that things were as critical as they were.
If you had the landlord registry, you would have known what's going on. And you say you're bailing out your son like he's a teenager. No, he was a grown man, an investor in many properties.
Not many properties.
Huh?
Yeah, there's three. That's
Yeah.
no many. And his partner, he was a silent partner. He was a silent partner that lived in another state.
You take the responsibility. You make sure it's getting done. And why was it when the landlord registry was passed, you never registered?
I
Why?
registered.
When?
I registered
This year.
I registered when they began. Remember, a law is passed, and then there are steps that administratively that make it go into effect. That's true with state law. That's true with government law.
You passed it in June of 2013. You didn't register in 2013. You didn't register in 2014, and you decided to register in 2015. Maybe. Did you register all the properties?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Did you pay the fees?
I sure
That's
did.
good. So the thing is, it took the deaths of three people, plus my campaign, to make her register the properties. Should have done it immediately. Should have done it immediately. And I didn't hear you call out the city manager. I didn't hear you complain. Are you going to disavow your supporters, your developers?
Not my
You're getting
supporters.
most of your money from developers yeah. And you're getting some with the LLCs so they get around the limits of $2,000. You want the name? We'll get you the name.
I have a whole list of supporters in this city because I have a whole lot of folks that want to support the city moving forward and believe the city is moving forward. And that's individuals, that's businesses, that's LLCs, that's everybody.
Jonathan, how would you handle the code enforcement?
How would I handle it?
Yeah, as with these folks that are not allowing code enforcement and tenants not allowing them in.
You get a warrant. Get a search warrant. It's very easily done. You go to court and they sign it. That's all.
Well, I get, and I understand, and I think Newburgh's registry law does have a provision, does have a clause referencing warrants. But I remember talking to Joe DiStefano about Middletown's registry law, and and I asked about the warrants, and this was right after the government outside deaths in Newburgh, and it basically was told, it's not exactly a low bar to get a warrant from a judge to go in for that particular reason. So you're going to have probably need some, exigent circumstances in order to get a court order to actually allow code enforcement in. So it's not like you can just say, I need a warrant to inspect this property.
And it's more time and it's more cost.
that does, there is that question. Okay, so now you're gonna enforce this thing. What are you gonna do? How are you going to handle it when landlords or tenants don't let you in? And, because that's obviously gonna happen. So, I mean, what do you do?
Are you looking at, again,
Well, I think it's a question for both of you guys. I mean, how are you going to totally, I mean, obviously you're gonna have some landlords who have always been fine with it and will continue to be fine, come in, blah, blah, blah. But you're gonna have those landlords who are not gonna let you in, and those tenants who are not gonna let you in, so how do you handle that? I mean, what do you do?
I think that we've got a very, very difficult line to follow, but we've got to probably make a statement with the landlords that says we have to get in. And so if we have to take one or two to court, then the rest will follow along and comply. So at some point, you have to really follow through with the law. I support the law that we passed, and it's a matter, and it's an administrative issue that we're finally getting into it. It's a timing problem that we've had here, and it's a timing problem with, you have to remember, we had to get the fire department to agree to help us because we are limited in our code numbers, and that was a negotiation that really took several months to get the fire department to agree to actually let the firefighters. And even now, that's tied to us getting the new grant. I think you know that, right? So when we talk about the number of rental properties, 70% rental properties, we have about 10,000 units of housing in the city. That means there's about 7,000 rental units. How do you even get through that number every single year without an army of people to do codes?
How many people, I mean, it obviously heavily, landlord based,
Yeah.
but how many landlords right now on the city's books have a fine that they've not paid?
I don't know that number.
Is it something that should be looked at to follow up to find out whether Joe was assessed something in 2013 and still not paid?
We probably have those numbers, and that's part of what our legal office would
Part of the problem
follow
is
through.
that they're not enforcing the law. So the fines could be much more than what it is. They're not enforcing it. They say, okay, go ahead. You can't use an excuse. It said that the agreement, what I read in the paper, said if the number of firemen go below 55, then they can get out from doing it. Well, they're at 62 now. So they have people that are there. You can do it. Or you're just going to brag about it in a press release. You have to get it done, and you're not getting it done. And it's a matter of priority. It's a matter of commitment to it. And you can't say, oh, the landlords. No, you have to get it done. You go door to door, and you get it done. And once people know that, they're going to let you in. They know they're not going to be thrown out on the street just because you're coming in looking for things.
I would follow up what Joe said. If you don't know how many landlords or who owes what, how can you enforce? And so you might have landlords that are continuing to receive fines, and they may be absentee, they may not. But if you don't go after them, how are you ever going to build any sort of enforcement? And with that, other landlords will see that you're taking a hard line.
Actually, you're exactly right. So when I say I don't know, I'm saying I don't know the number. I don't mean the city doesn't know the number. So
Right.
please know that. I don't know that number today. But our legal department will know that number and can, certainly give you that number. And so that's something I certainly can find out.
Well, there's the number, but then what is the city doing to follow up? What is the
Well,
city?
'cause
To the point of enforcement. I mean,
Right.
maybe there's none, I don't know. But if there's
So
more
what
than
you're
three,
saying
it's
is
a problem.
exactly right. You go to the data, right? You go to the data, and you find out, do I have Joe Smith, who's a landlord, who's consistently at this property, that property, and this other property,
Right.
not following through? And then you go after Joe, right?
Right.
You go after Joe and do something. And we know, just like in any of the crime situations, there's always a few that cause the most problems, right? That's just always true. And so as we begin this process to really implement this registry, as well as the vacant property registry, remember that's another one as well, we are now coming up and finding that we have certain people that we really need to lean on and other people that are complying and doing what they need to do. So I expect that process to get much cleaner as we go along. It's true with any kind of a law that you implement.
And I think, and Jonathan referenced the firefighters contract. So, and obviously the firefighters are a big part of doing this.
Huge
So
part.
What happens if you don't get the SAFER grant and is it still the plan to let go 12 of firefighters that you simply cannot afford, or?
We don't, again, here we are, right up against the rock and the hard place, right? There is no way that we could pay additional, how much money would that be? When you think about $100,000 per employee, when you put fringe benefits and all that stuff in there, you just kind of average that out. That's $1 million more in the budget.
You lost the federal grant because you didn't have the follow-up on the money
That's
on the
not true.
firefighters.
That's just
And look,
simply
the
not
thing
true.
is,
We didn't lose a federal grant,
No.
and there's nothing about follow-up. In fact, let's just be clear about grants. Let's just take a little segue here. For the first time in, I guess, ever, we actually have a process in place to follow up with grants. We've been very active in getting grants, but that's not the big deal. What I have discovered since being in office is that prior to my coming into office, there was nobody really tracking the grants and making sure, you get a grant, and a grant is very specific. You have to turn in the invoices, so it's you pay the money up front and then they reimburse you. Most all grants work that way. There was no tracking of our grants up to the time that we hired a grants management person that was really begin to go back to the fire department, the police department, wherever the grant was, the economic development, and actually make sure the invoices came in, that those invoices were then sent to the grant people who were allotting that grant, and that we were getting the money back. We have retrieved almost $4 million that were not being tracked since I've been in office. And that's a huge piece of managing money that is something new to the city, and I'm very, very happy to see that it's been implemented.
And I think, because I think in some respects, some of what we've been talking about is city government and its functioning. And frankly, the revenue losses, the disinvestment are pretty easy to figure out for Newburgh.
Sure.
In relationship to Newburgh's current situation. But what I'm still just getting a grasp of is just the degree to which city government was just totally dysfunctional. And I think that's contributed a lot to the city's current state. And the grant, just simple thing in terms of closing out a grant, sort of is one indication of that. And I was looking at housing cases for city courts, or got some numbers, and 2010 and then maybe 2009, 2010, maybe 1,700 cases, and then all of a sudden you see this big drop to around 1,000. So the question is, what happened? Well, I mentioned that to somebody, and they told me, well, one of the things that happened was you let go your code enforcement. You gutted your code enforcement department. So, I mean, what is it going to take to get city government doing what city government should do?
It's going to take a commitment. See, there's no commitment here. If I found out that the code enforcement person was let go, or there were 1,700 and now there's around 400 code violations enforcement, I'd be going crazy. That means there's a systematic non-commitment. There's a non-commitment to enforcing the code. And you
That
ask,
isn't what it means. That isn't what it
of
means.
course it means. You're telling me that the houses are that much better? Look,
No,
when
I'm
you
telling
did
you
when
there
you
were
did
no
the vacancy,
resources.
look, you completed the vacant property, right? And there's about 645 private owners and about maybe another 150 that the city owned. So when you did those 645, when you talk to them, you write them down, you find out what other properties they own. You start out with the assessment. You know what you have. And then you go from there, and you know which properties are one family or two family, except for one family is where you rent out 6 to 8 rooms in your house. But the thing is, you know where you have the landlords, you know where you have the owners, so you follow up. It's not that difficult. It's not that difficult. If you go door to door, you found the vacant properties, right? You got a landlord. You check that landlord to see if that landlord owns other property. If he does, then he goes on a list. And what do? You ask him, hey, Do you, you know, you can go by the house, and you know he's not living there, you know it's a landlord, so you start with the list, you start with the vacant property list, you start with the assessment list, you go through the work, and you do it. And you need to have it there, because how else are you gonna do it? You have to go door to door, and you have to get it done. You have to be a
If
commitment.
they lose the grant and have to get rid of the firefighters, that'll drop them below the number where firefighters will be doing code enforcement, correct?
Correct.
Is that correct?
I believe that's what it said, if they got below 55.
Right, so how would you do it if you don't have enough fire department people to do it?
Then I would have to try to get other people to do it, other people to train and to get it done. But I don't know why 55 is a magic number.
What other people? What
You know,
other
why
people?
is it a magic?
What other
Because
people?
Because it's the number that's negotiated.
So I got a better idea then. Then we don't enforce it, and we're gonna have more fires. So,
Well, no, I'm not-
is that
I'm
what
not-
you, is that what you're suggesting? What I'm suggesting
No,
is.
I'm not.
No,
That-
what I'm
that's a-
suggesting
That's
is,
that's the number that had been
but I don't know,
negotiated.
and I don't know
You're not
why.
answering the question.
What's the question?
The question is, if you don't have firefighters inspecting for code enforcement, how are you gonna do it if you're mayor?
Well, first of all, the fire chief can do it, and secondly, you can get other people. You can
How?
you can train them. You can get them.
With what money?
With what money? Find it in the budget.
From what?
You go through the budget and you find it. I don't have the full budget, okay? That wasn't given to me. But you have to find it in there and you find what you can do.
What are you gonna not do to do that is the question.
I don't know at the moment. I don't know.
Okay, well, that's the question, I mean,
But I tell you what you don't do. I remember last year's budget, and when people were complaining that the city manager and the controller were trying to get raises, and they tried to put in $5,000 for dues and things that we never had before in the mayor's office. Does she need a part-time assistant for 15 grand a year? What I am saying is, you have to, I think here's what I think. I think it's like going in your house and you have a budget.
Yep.
You can't do all the windows, you can't do the entire roof.
right.
But you have to have a commitment, a priority to do it and find ways we can get it done. Find ways.
You have not seen this year's budget.
No, it hasn't been issued to the public
So
yet.
you looked at last year's budget, where do you see excess dollars that can go toward the resources you need to correct the city's woes? What have you analyzed out of the 14 budget that you could reallocate to address some inefficiencies the mayor and others are doing?
I would take money from the council's budget. I would take money from the raises that were given in City Hall. I would also think that just with the people we have, let's send them out on the street and do it.
Who?
Who?
The firemen are there right now.
Well, no, but they have to be firemen.
But they're there and we have it. We have 62. There are people there. It said if you get below 55, they
Right,
have
I'm
to.
saying if you lose the grant and you go below 55, we're saying you're mayor, the grant goes away, you're down to 55.
Well, I'm not-
Who are the people that are gonna go do it, is the question.
Well, first of all, you're saying with the what ifs.
That's what
Well,
the mayor.
okay, yeah, no. Well, first of all, the first thing is, what do you do today? Because there's people there. So you get them out there to do it.
Aren't they doing it now?
Huh? No.
Yes.
If they are, then why is it there's only 400 code violations brought and there were 1,700 before? Why is it then that you don't have a list of all the landlords and stuff when you could have done
We
it?
do have a list.
Of all the landlords?
Yes,
Yes?
yes.
Okay, maybe we need to change the subject because we keep going round and round. I want to talk about roads because I think you brought up something really important early on. You said, you want to keep going? Okay.
Mainly we're changing the subject because, Mayor, you said something earlier that struck me, the snitch and stitch. How
say
do
that.
I, as a resident of Newburgh, if I am aware of a murder, God forbid, or a crime, whatever it may be, how do I feel safe? Where can I go to report something without fear of retaliation from
Right.
whatever level?
We're actually working on a line that people could call so they don't have to, because if they're seen going into the police department,
Right.
if they're, if anybody knows. So we're working on a process right now. I can't say a lot about that.
Okay.
But when we're ready, we will. In terms of helping people be able to help the police, because it's an integral part of what we've got to do to make this shift in safety.
You have a timeline for, because I think
Probably within
99% of the
about,
residents want to feel safer somehow.
they do. It's a huge issue. And, people are calling us, and I know this and I know that. And so we need to be able to take that information in a safe way. And it's probably about 30 days or thereabouts
Okay.
that we'll be able to say more about some of the things that are happening
Okay.
with this initiative that we've got. We've been actually working with the Boys and Girls Club, working with youth organizations. So it's a pretty good sized coalition that is working on what we're trying to do with this group of young men, I guess the best way to say it, to create more safety in the city.
And your answer is I'd probably look into using community block grants that come every year, and we have budgets. And I think that, that would be a place to look for additional money.
So I would like to address a couple of things here that have been said. One of them is that nothing has happened until his campaign. We set aside $1.2 million to start a street program last March before Mr. Jacobson ever decided to talk about a campaign. And that was set aside for a 3-year program to start this fall. There's been a plan. What seems to be missing here in some of this conversation is that planning in a city isn't an overnight affair. It takes time to lay out the resources. It takes a lot of energy to make that happen. And our DPW site group have been doing all kinds of things in terms of fixing our building. So we've moved their resources there. We've moved the resources to take care of some of these vacant buildings. So the streets had to wait till fall to actually begin that. I also want to bring up the CHIPS money for the first time in, I actually don't know when. Our city manager actually has been attending the transportation meetings in Orange County to get our CHIPS money and make sure. We were about to lose them, just so you know that. And we haven't had a city manager that's been on that case for I don't know how long. And so this is how we actually got the money to do our streets, is to again, get on top of what we need to as far as getting our streets fixed. And really, I want to go back to something you said, Leonard, and that is that for I don't know how long, we had 6 city managers just rolling over. It's a revolving door. When you have that going on, you cannot have stability. You don't get things enforced. Things get lost in the shuffle. This one's working on that. He walks out the door. He doesn't pass the papers on, and then you just end up with this shuffle. My colleague here wants to make sure that he weakens the city manager job, and that he doesn't think our city manager is doing his job. He wants to micromanage the employment base, and so as we
That's not true.
as we move forward, we really have to get behind our city manager and help him be successful instead of tearing it down and tearing it apart. Because flipping this government around over and over and over again has created
Judy, I never
complete chaos at City Hall, where we haven't been able to really enforce a lot of things. And so when you're talking about a very limited budget and all the things that need to be getting done, when you have buildings falling over, right? When you have so many buildings that haven't been managed for over 50 years, and you have all these vacant properties, it's a good thing we have such a great relationship with our Attorney General and the land bank, which happens to be one of the few land banks in the state. And we've got about something like 35 properties in the pipeline right now to come back online through the land bank process. So trying to get ahead of these things that have been neglected for years and years and years. Chaos at City Hall has been a real issue, and so I think for the first time we're starting to build some stability. We put asset management in place at City Hall. You realize that we didn't even know where our assets were. We didn't know what assets we had. We didn't have department heads managing their assets. That is what our comptroller put in place 2 years ago. So it's just been building these business processes that make city government work, makes any organization
Can I
work
answer
better.
some of these
Go right
buzzwords? that Judy uses? Look, I've never said I want to replace the city manager. What I said was, very simply, I've said it to my running mates, I've said it to my supporters, and I've said it publicly. I want accountability, I want the city manager and the department heads to follow the wishes of the council. That's what I have done. So you don't say after 2 years, oh, we had this city manager and he wasn't doing his job. That's an excuse. All you do is make excuses, except if something turns out right, then you take credit for it. No excuses, accountability. That's our job. What I said was, I didn't want to micromanage. What I said was that when there's an appointment, right now, the city manager gets to appoint everybody without the approval of the council. So that's more power than the president or the governor or the county exec in their respective governments.
But the council then is, you have to give the city manager some sort of leeway to be able to appoint people if the city manager is then held accountable by the council.
We're talking about the department heads.
Okay, but if the city manager fails, then the council can take, its marching orders and then
Well,
replace the manager.
I don't think you have to.
But do you want the council to be micromanaging?
No! Get this, listen, not micromanaging. I would rather have, and this is not something I'm pushing at day one or really, but in an ideal situation, that when there's an appointment of a department head, that there's a up or down vote by the council. Same thing you have in
But
Middletown.
that's gonna slow.
Okay, that's a question though. The city kind of went in the other direction when it changed the charter.
Yeah.
Right?
That's right.
It now takes more votes to get rid of the city
Right,
manager.
and I don't want to have to.
Excuse me, let me
Oh.
finish. You compared the fire chief to the Attorney General of the United States as being appointed positions.
Yeah.
Well, the Attorney General is a constitutional officer in line for the presidency who's a policymaker. The fire chief is not a policymaker.
Yeah, but the Department of Social Services is the same thing in the county government. Go ahead.
The Attorney General is the one who you used. He makes policy. He's in line to succeed the president. The fire chief, an important job, God knows, carries out policy and is not in line to succeed the mayor. So isn't there an employee-employer relationship here that you want to change? You don't want the city manager to employ the best fire chief. You want to make it a political decision.
No.
Excuse me, what's not political about having a council vote?
Okay.
How is that not political?
I'll
Let's start with
explain.
that.
Let me explain what politics. It's in the sense that that you have an appointment, and I'm not looking to change this on day one. In fact, I think because what you want to have is just that you could get a up or down vote. But then once
That doesn't make it political?
But once the person is appointed, the council would not be able to fire. The city manager would still be able to fire. So that's what I'm talking about.
Okay.
So all I'm saying is that you have to have accountability. Right now, you need 5 to fire.
Right.
And I'm the only one running with a team. Judy's not running with a team for this election. She's running by herself. I'm running with 2 running mates. She's running by herself.
Is that good or bad? I mean, the team could be block voting, and that's not good either, because then that can get into
You
politics.
say politics. I believe in politics. I believe in democracy. Maybe, we're not a colony.
Right.
We're not getting up, there's not some governor.
Who said we're a colony?
No, I didn't say you were, but I said we're not a colony.
Okay.
We have a form of government where the voters get to choose the council, and the council then gets to appoint a city manager, but that isn't where our job ends. Our job is accountability. And I never said that we would, I don't want to fire the city, I want the city manager to do what's going on.
But my concern is you're pressing this idea of the team, and my fear is that so now the team gathers up and does its huddle, and now the team can control as it sees fit, and it's not the people and it's not the mayor. It's the team is going to be controlling.
It's the people. Where do you think the people how do they get elected? They don't get appointed, they get elected. And so that if people are upset and they want to have code enforcement, they want to have the streets getting fixed, they want to have tax stability, and we run on that, then we have an obligation, that's what a democracy is, to implement the policy. That's all. I mean, it's simple democracy. I mean, what are you going to do? I mean, I don't believe my job is to cut ribbons on things.
Should we elect the fire chief then? Because we
No.
elect. Well, hang on a second. We elect the Attorney General of the state. We elect the District Attorney of the county. Following your reasoning, we should be
No.
electing the fire chief.
No.
Well, then what is the difference between appointing what you want and electing? Because I'm confused.
Okay. Well, first of all, for example, in the DPW or county government, department heads are appointed and the legislature approves, right? That's what happens with the county
Well, and
executive.
in towns, we elect coroners and.
We don't have
Highway
a,
superintendent.
we don't have a governor.
No, I'm saying, but it's all over the place. There's not a yes or no. It's all
All I'm
over.
saying is that,
Why do you want to change it is the question.
well, because the reason is I thought that the city manager has more power than any other executive in any government. And I thought there'd need to be accountability that you wouldn't, and this way it would work out. And I would say that in 99% of the time, you wouldn't have
Are
to.
you critical of the fire chief we have now, or the city, the police chief we have, or the one we just had? Would we have had a different fire chief or police chief if you had been in mayor?
Probably not when he was appointed. Look, here's the thing. I just want to see accountability. All right? And I don't think we have to resort to firing the city manager. That means, and what do you need now? You need 5 votes, which means he only listens to 3. He can decide only to listen to 3 out of 7. So the majority doesn't even rule.
I guess I'm trying back. Are you saying that the fire chief and police chief that we have had were not doing good enough jobs because they were appointed by the city manager?
No, I didn't say that.
Okay, then I'm wondering why you want to change the system. Because again, there are several systems. No
I-
one of them is everywhere.
I really don't want to, listen, I'm not running on that.
Well, but you proposed that before you ran
I proposed that because, yeah,
and defended it in an op-ed.
of course I defended it. I know.
Comparing the attorney
No,
general.
I compared the
fire chief.
department heads with the
Well, you-
different things, and look, that's not why I'm running. What I'm running for is to have accountability.
Okay.
And if the city manager, and I'm not gonna sit here for 2.5 years, we got a bad city manager, nothing's being done. You wake up and all of a sudden you decide that, Judy? No, my job is to make sure that it's getting done. There's no commitment to code enforcement. There has to be a commitment to the paving the streets. There has to be a commitment to these things.
I believe there has been a commitment to all of those things, and in fact, we've been doing every one of them.
But it isn't being done. You just said it wasn't being done because you had bad city managers. Now you're saying it's getting done. You can't have it both ways. You can't have it both ways.
That's exactly right, my friend.
You can't have it both ways.
You have a city manager that manages employees, and by the way, I think the proper analogy for our kind of city manager is that you need to see it more from a perspective of, we have a board that sets policy, right? And then the city manager and the respective departments implement those policies.
And that's what I'm saying,
It's
that
just
the
what you kind of-
oversight
wait a
of the
minute.
council to set the policy of the city manager, and if it's done correctly, I'm happy.
So what we have right now in councils, in problems, is that we have council members that want to micromanage our city manager and consistently are interfering in employee relationships, and some of that is going on under your direction at this time. So
That's a fault.
let's-
Judy, I'm gonna make a deal with you. If you quit
Tell me
telling the
again.
lies about me, I'll quit telling the truth about you. How's that?
Can you want to just take a minute and explain what you're talking about? You should, since you just said it.
I should, that's true. His campaign manager is one of our city council people. And I think you all know that. And that city council person on a regular basis is sending out letters, and if I have to do it, I will, constantly sending out letters to our council people about wanting to see who's hired, who's not hired, why did they hire this one, why did they hire that one, why did they do this, why did they do that? And so it's a constant barrage that's coming from the civil service situation. And so I'm just going to say, and so there's a very tight connection there, and there's a very tight connection with all those emails that I'm getting. And that's why I say what I say.
I think that if a council person decides that they want to know what's going on and they have questions, they get answered. That's all.
Okay.
And I think that's a good thing. Or maybe we just don't do anything. Maybe then what you should do is you appoint the city manager, and then if something good happens and there's a grant coming from the county and the state, you go there and you cut the ribbons and that's it. No, that's not my job, as I see it as a mayor.
Would you see your job as mayor as a city manager?
Say it again?
Would you see your job as mayor more as the city manager?
No.
What do
So where would you
what do see the
differentiate
mayor's
yourself?
job
Right, the
as?
mayor's job and the city manager job. What would be your job?
My
as the
job
mayor?
as leader of the council is to help the council would set the policy of the city government and to have oversight, like every legislature in our democracy, of the executive branch, which is headed by the city manager. It's oversight. Are things getting done? Why is it there's only 300 code enforcements when there were 1,700? I want an explanation. Why is it that the landlord registry is not complete? I want an explanation. I want it done. Why is it that there is this thing, the streets are not being done? Where is the money? Where's the money going? What is the plan? That's what I want to see.
Why would you need then a city manager?
Huh?
Why would you need a city
see-
manager under what you're describing?
Well, first of all, that's the policy. That's what the government is right now.
Right.
I'm not saying anything new. Why do you need a city manager? Because that's the CEO. He's going to run it every day. I don't care, what the tire pressure is with the DPW trucks. I don't care.
No, but you've taken it a step above. You said that he's going to manage the city every day, but the way you were describing it, it sounded as if, as mayor, you would be managing.
That's
the city.
absolutely not true. Let me try to say it again, more clearly. Our job is to set the policy. So if our policy is to enforce the code, pave the streets, and then we see that this isn't being done, then we say to the city manager, why isn't it being done? And we want you to get it done.
And he says to you, would you like me to take the resources from here to do it? Or would you like me to take the resources from here to do it? Because we have these very limited resources, and so we need to make these very tough, hard decisions about which thing we can do at any given time. And that's what goes on at City Hall on a regular basis, is consistently making very tough, hard decisions between, do we do this or do we do that? And so on a regular basis, and I would just like to say what I have done, and he keeps alluding to I do ribbon cutting. I do ribbon cutting. In fact, every way I know how to support businesses and encouraging them and to support them, I will do everything. But I also work about 35 to 45 hours a week as volunteer time for our city. I consistently see this mayor's job, even though in the charter, it lays out we should lead the council. We should, my job is to marry people, which I do on Fridays, and basically be the emissary out to the public. And so on a regular basis, what I do is I meet with business leaders, I meet with government leaders, I meet with the state leaders, I meet with our federal officials. I'm consistently building coalition. I meet with our nonprofit organizations in conjunction with state leaders to bring resources to the city. So I see my job not so much as managing the manager all the time. What we do is ask for reports and what are we doing, and then in collaboration try to figure out what do we need to do. So it's a constant effort. We're more like the board of directors, and I am worked more like the head of the board of the directors. We hire a CEO to manage the operations, the daily operations. That's what he should be doing. So I don't see this, you don't have...
Judy, you're conflicting yourself again, because if that's the case, and you have a board of directors, and it was a corporation, a profit corporation, and then the corporation came in and they were losing money, you would say,
They would
hey,
fire the CEO and get a new one.
or you would say, right? Or you would say,
Which is
what's
what we
going,
do.
right? And you would want to,
Packard kind of gives
you would
it
want
like
to, you would want to fire the CEO, or you'd want to make changes, right? That's exactly what I'm saying. So and
That's
so,
what we do.
I have another question.
but the job is also all those things and
You want
more.
to get to the roads?
No, I think we got roads. Roads got worked in there. Although there's been a lot of other people, but Bill obviously is the lead on that. Newburgh can't survive forever on
philanthropy.
nonprofits. It needs
Exactly.
to bring in business. It needs industry. It needs jobs.
And that is
How do you
big.
well, I want one and two. Sell Newburgh to me. I'm a CEO. Why should I come there?
Okay. Well, first of all, I think what we have to do in order to sell Newburgh even better, and I'll answer your question. is we have to get our act together so that.
Okay, I'm not gonna listen I'm done. Hi, I wanna come to
No, but
Newburgh.
no, okay.
Your
I
first
understand.
answer is.
But I'm
we
giving
have
you
to get
some.
our act
All right,
together.
no, then I'll answer your question. But I want to say that we have to do these things.
We know you wanna get our act together. We know she thinks you're in a hole. I'm giving you that. I'm
Okay.
stipulating.
Right.
You got it.
Okay.
Sell it to me.
So Newburgh.
Yeah.
Newburgh is in a perfect location for your business.
Okay.
It's on the crossroads in the northeast. You're an hour from New York City. You got all the major highways. You have a willing population that wants to work. You have colleges there that can help train the employees. You can work with Startup New York. We're gonna, if I'm there, I'm gonna push to get an incubator so it's not out at Stewart and have it there. I'm gonna push to get, because I'm gonna try to get new office space so that we can get that kind of property going. And I think you should bring your business there because we have a lot of unused property. We have a lot of vacant property. We have lots of, that buildings could be torn down or built. And I think that what we can do is we can use all the resources and give you, and make it that it's worth your while. And you can make a lot of money in Newburgh.
I've been asking Eddie Diana, Steve Newhouse, why the hell the incubator is out at Stewart where it doesn't need to be? How do you get them to move or start a new one?
I'm going to start a new one.
How?
How? We just do it.
You said
We
that a
just
lot
do
today.
it. We take CBG grant. I go to the Newburgh Partnership. I go to the chamber, and I say, let's do this. We get different businesses that would contribute to do it. We get the larger businesses, and we start it. And it doesn't take that much. The incubators, what you have is where they share a space, and you can have cheap rent, and sometimes it's one room, sometimes it's 3 rooms, and they have a common secretary sometimes, or a receptionist, or do the stuff, and that's what you can do. You just gotta do this stuff. You can't just wait for a whole plan with a 20-page booklet. I just want to do it. I'm in business myself. I do my 941s, okay?
Not in Newburgh, by the way.
Huh?
Not in the city
It
of
was in the
Newburgh.
city. I moved where the court is, where my workers' comp is. So what? So the thing is, I know what has to be done, and what you want to do is to bring it there, and then you can just do it. You can just do these things. And I would also, for the short term, for people that need jobs, I would look to get transportation to where the jobs are. But I think you need to do. You need to work with the state and federal governments to start up New York. Let's start up. Let's do it. Let's get some property. I am sure that if you talk to people and you talk to the right people in the chamber types and the partnership and so forth, we can get our own incubator.
If you got elected, and I guess it applied for both of you, being that it's up for re-election here, they always use the term, I think it first came about with Clinton. Let's jump forward. It's 100 days past when you got elected. What's different about the city of Newburgh? What's energizing? What vision have you put out there that's not there now?
I think there'd be a definite plan on how we're enforcing the code and what's being done with the resources we have. By that point, I will have been up in Albany and Washington looking to get more money for the future, because there would have been the state of the state and the other things. I've already been in touch with the governor's office. And the Attorney General called me after the primary to congratulate me and talked about things, about the land bank and other things that are going on. What would be done in 100 days? We would have that. There'd be a sense that there will be people at City Hall that will want to get things done. And I think that there'll be a new attitude. There'll be a new attitude concerning the streets, concerning the code enforcement, concerning the overwhelm to get economic development here. I think there'd be a new attitude, a new spirit, someone that wants to get it done and not mired in buzzwords and press releases that don't have follow-up. And I think that that's going to be a change.
Okay. Because morale and perception didn't get there overnight, and it's not going to change overnight. And I guess for the mayor, the same question. What if you're reelected 100 days from then, what's different about the way you're running the city if you foresee that there is a need to change?
I think we need to stay the course for one thing. Continue, we need to keep working with the police department. But I think there's another piece here, and I've been talking about it almost regularly with our economic development. It's time to put the heart back in the city. It's time to rebuild the river drive. So what I see for Newburgh now in 100 days, you're just going to get seed plants. But what the seed that needs to be planted and worked harder is with the developers that are already coming, because we have actually done a perception change on Newburgh already. We have people coming who finally want to reinvest in the city. You couldn't get anybody to move here. I think I've said to people, we had sold 102 properties just this year, and we got another 73 under contract. You couldn't sell property in Newburgh in 2012. So we got people coming. They're coming from Brooklyn. They're coming from everywhere, wanting to reinvest. The place now is mixed use on River Drive, and so I'm working with the state right now to get the funds to move the sewer that's down there. They're running diagonal through that property. So if we can fix what's underground, we got developers who want to come, and this is where we build the tax base to get out of the nonprofit situation, because we've had to run with so much grants and so many things. We need to build the tax base. So my focus is on building the tax base and bringing in the development, creating the jobs and creating some security. That's where I'm going.
Okay.
Yeah, and I was, I think my last question was just specific ideas for revenue. I mean, because obviously taxes are a non-starter, and it sounds like Michael's even talking about next year, trying to look for a way to do another tax
Revenue
increase.
generation is where we ought to go.
Jonathan, revenues, how do you get them? How do you get more revenues? Non-tax revenues, non-property tax revenues.
Non-property tax revenues?
How do you get, obviously property tax, how do you get more revenues without increasing taxes?
Obviously, there's just two ways. The first way is to get more people paying taxes, which means getting more businesses and more homeowners, which means getting buildings paid. And the second way is to get it from the state and federal government. I mean, that's just the obvious. And we get, and I mentioned the community block grant. I didn't think of it right away. We can use that. And if there are not-for-profits, well, maybe then they can train people that can be the code enforcers. Code enforcement. Maybe that can be done.
Sidewalks if we take it.
But What?
I said if we take it out of CDBG, because right now money is going for parks. It's going for doing streets or curbs and sidewalks. We're helping our homeowners redo their sidewalks because they're a disaster. We also have a small loan fund. We're helping people put in their heating systems and redo their electric for that. We're using CDBG money to build the skate park and for that sort of thing. So if he's going to take it to do codes, then we're going to not do sidewalks, and we're not going to do loan programs and facade programs on Broadway.
Look.
Every decision is something else has to go. And just do it. Somebody's not connected with reality, because every just do it means resources, it means people, it means a whole lot of decisions, and just do it does not work.
Just do it works because, first of all, you have the ability to do more with what you got if you want to get it done.
Okay.
If you want to get it done, you can do more with what you have.
Which we have been doing after 100 people were laid off in 2011.
Look,
and we have been doing on a
Judy, you're
very
just saying you
small-
couldn't do it for years, and now you might be doing. Look, so second thing is obviously when you look at the budget, you got to find, and it's not going to be easy. And I'm not. And look, I know it isn't easy, and you got to take maybe 5,000 here, 10,000 here, 20,000, and all of a sudden you got 50,000. That's what it is.
And we've been doing exactly that for 4 years.
Yeah, okay. So, and one thing I'm not doing is I'm not taking money from developers. Okay, Judy? You're taking money from developers. You're taking money that it's pay for play. You got LLCs. So they can give $3,000 instead of $2,000. The same principles. There's 4 Grand Street LLC, 109 First Street LLC, and that's Julie Lindell. They each gave $1,000. I'm not taking money. I put most of my campaign is funded by myself, and because I'm not taking money from developers. I had friends that that own buildings. They're up to code. They're fine. They wanted to give me money. I said no, it would look bad. So that's what I'm not doing. And I think that it's important that you're able to make the decisions based on what's best for the city, not on whether that person was a friend.
How do you address it, Judy? I mean, it could be certainly the perception of folks that if you're taking money from developers, and we know what the issue is in terms of landlords in the city, it's one of the great problems. How do you balance it? Whether it is completely on the up and up, it certainly doesn't look great at times.
So people are donating to my campaign in a furious way right now, because they are scared to death that under a new regime, under my opponent, that the whole city's gonna fall apart.
Yeah, but you can control
So,
the donations.
So in terms of donations is concerned, I have not and have never promised anybody anything. I never promised the landlords anything. I have never made any deals with anybody. And so from my perspective, we're all in this together trying to pull a city out of a hole. And from a I mean, he's talking about developers as if they're the sin of sins. And they're just people. They're just people. They're just people trying to help
Corporations
the
are
city.
people too? Who said
I
that
didn't
before?
say corporations. We're not talking about corporations. Let's don't go off track here. So we've got a lot of people coming to the city right now trying to pull it out. For instance, Bill Kanye, and I'm just going to mention his name, started a small business incubator here in the city. By the way, what he said has already been done, just so you know that. He's already, so talk to Bill Kanye about the small business incubator that he's already put together. It's people like that and that are coming here and they're just simply getting behind what we've already done and saying, we need to keep the ball rolling. And so as a developer, he's talking about Julie Lindell. There's a couple of young ladies that came in that bought a house over here and one over there. And they want to see the city move forward. That's it. That's it.
One of my questions, and the last one maybe unless someone has, is as someone who does not live in Newburgh but makes the trip from Sullivan County to Newburgh because he enjoys the waterfront, enjoys getting away, and appreciates the beauty of that. And in the summer, it's one of the best places in the region. I love.
Absolutely.
But I know when you talk to friends, you go, where are you going? You're going to Newburgh, and right, their eyes light up. And we have places in our region that are like that. There are points. How do you change that perception? Because there's a perception, there's a reality, and the things both of you have talked about can change some elements of the reality. How do you change that perception that has stayed with the city now for probably close to 50 years, and where it's a dangerous place, where if you're going to drive through, you better go directly to the waterfront. You don't want to drive 2 blocks away. You don't want to park on Broadway. You're going to go to the Armory, but you better be inside the barbed wire fence. How do you change the perception of what's in the city?
I think that it's more than boosterism. It's more than just saying everything is fine. I think you have to be realistic on how you promote the city and what's being there, and then you have to promote it in the best way possible to get people to come down and to do things. I think that you have to, it's not enough to say there's no crime when you have these murders. You have to be realistic about that. And you have to then, you have to go along and you have to promote different things. See, what you need to do in neighborhoods is you need to have a reason for people to come around. So you have to have a mix. A great book, The Death and Life of Cities by Jane Jacobs. It's an old book from Montreal. And what they do is you got to have a mix of things in the city for people to come down and see that it's safe and that there's a reason to be there. But I think as far as promoting the city, yeah, we have to promote it. We have our festivals, we have our things. But I think the key is that we have to not only put a happy face on, we have to put a realistic face on. And we have to show what's going on. And it's gonna take time. It's not easy. It's absolutely not easy. But it's something that we have to do.
Hey, kind of a follow-up to what Barry said, and I moved here about 10 years ago, and I guess it's a question for the mayor present. Do you meet regularly with the residential realtors? Should that be considered in the sense of what they are seeing from people that are thinking of moving to Newburgh and then they get pushed away? Or
So
maybe you can
when
learn-
you say, do I meet regularly with a group? No. What I do is talk with several of them. There's one that lives 2 doors down from me, Chris Hansen, and he and I have neighbor conversations on a regular basis. I also meet with Kiki Hayden, who is somebody that I know very, very well. So that's how I know what's going on. There's a group called Newburgh for Newcomers that actually goes to Brooklyn and recruits people up here, and it has become a really growing population. So in terms of promoting the city and moving the city, because you didn't ask that question to me, that has been probably my key focus for the last 4 years, is promoting the city. And so working with the realtors.
I'm not saying to promote the city, I'm just saying to hear the negatives that the realtors
Oh, yeah.
are hearing.
And actually, that's part of what has driven what we're doing, because it started out that literally what you said, don't come, I live on Grand Street. And I have people who would not come to my house because I'm on Grand Street, right?
Right.
And so I have really had to work with people about, what do I do? And I literally do walk all over the city. I walk in the toughest places. And what I generally say to people is this: if you're minding your own business, you're going to be perfectly fine. If you're in the middle of a drug trade, watch out. You may go down. So if you're here for drugs, forget it. That's really what I say. Because I walk in all, and I don't believe it's really safe to go out late at night. So I don't cross those boundaries at night, right? But during the daytime, I'm everywhere. I'm on all the toughest streets. I'm on every corner. And so from that perspective, I feel perfectly safe.
But as the mayor, you don't want the response to be, on in a summer night, I don't walk the streets.
And I agree. I'm not making that little. I'm not diminishing that. You sure don't want that.
But people who live on these streets, and Leonard had done the story, and it was the voices of people, and it was like we shouldn't have to worry about guns coming into our bedrooms from the outside. We should be safe. Should be safe.
Which I happen to believe is why I am so focused on safety. On working on this crime issue and these kids with guns. Safety, cleaning it up, and economic development. Those three, and they circle around each other. They feed into each other, right? As you take down, and as you bring in more business, and you get more jobs. As you get more jobs, you take a few more off the street. As you take a few more off the street, it gets a little safer, and around that little circle it goes. And so that is why I say it's going to take consistent focus on those three elements. And then codes will be enforced. There's a whole lot of things that keep taking this focus. And so in order to promote the city, you have to tell people you're working on this. We're doing this, we're doing this, we're doing this. Which is what I do when I get in front of the camera, is that I'm constantly telling people, we're working on the police issue, we're doing this, this, and this. And I've just iterated all that, right? We're working on the buildings, we're doing this, this, and this. We're working on cleaning it up. We've got cleanup crews. By the way, cleaning it up, he talked about the garbage and the litter and all of that stuff. Every year for the last 5 years, I am in the middle of the cleanup. I'm out there with my bag, my stuff, my things, cleaning up, it's about 30 ton, is that right? 30 of the 10-ton dumpsters carrying garbage out of the city. I'm there. You've never seen my opponent in any of cleanups. You've never seen my opponent in any of the city committee meetings. You've never seen my opponent really working on these issues until his campaign. So I'm in the middle. I'm out with the people. I'm working with the people in order to be the leader, in order to demonstrate I am in the middle of it. I'm working with you to move this city forward. And in fact, what was it? It was in March, right after I was elected, 2012, that I launched the community action teams. Remember that? And out of that grew the Newburgh Illuminated Festival, which brought over 6,000 people into the city this year. It's been growing. Out of that grew the Newburgh Professional and the Business Organization, because business now has a voice that they didn't have after the Chamber of Commerce left. Out of that grew the effort to bring the bones back to Newburgh, and they're still working on that.
Bring the what back?
The bones of the African American population, or in the burial that was underneath the
I was going to ask about the bones.
Courthouse.
Yeah.
Sure, that man.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was the African American graveyard that was hit when they were doing the courthouse.
The problem is, though, there's not follow-up on things.
Of course there is.
There was a press release that we're going to use the activity center as a warming station, but it closed at 10 o'clock at night. Now, that's ridiculous. It wasn't doing the job. Instead of the effort of a press release, you put the effort into the shelters and making sure. We have one closed and we're hoping to get another one open now. I know what's going on there. But what I think has got to be done is you got to get the act together so that it's, you're right, there is a circle effect. But if you don't enforce the building code, which hasn't been done, then you're not going to get home ownership. And because people are not going to want to buy houses, they're worried about their
I
houses.
wonder how they happened to buy 102 homes in the city just
maybe
this year and another 73 under contract. I wonder how that happened. That's actual fact.
All
They
right.
actually did that.
But that's the same houses that were there. I'm talking about the other houses.
Oh, no, there's
all right?
lots of
and what I'm
cities selling houses
I'm-
every day. Every
Of
council
course,
meeting
there's
we're
going to be.
selling
The
houses.
city didn't go into it didn't go into a sinkhole. But what I'm saying is that we have to do that. We have to, and we know another thing that has been mentioned here tonight is about our kids. Politicians like to say the children are our future. Well, I thought it was an abomination, and she's going to mention some parks that were done, but I thought it was an abomination that our city pool was closed August 6th, beginning of the hottest month of the year. I thought that was incredibly bad. And
By the way, I actually called our Parks and Rec and asked him about that, and I said, what would it take to keep it open? And he said $100,000 to keep it open till the end of...
for another 4 weeks,
Yep, that's what he told me.
I don't believe
Because we
it.
had to...
I heard it was
wait a minute, we
28,000.
have to keep lifeguards, you have to keep it's the not only the staff, but it's the
You
chemicals.
say it
it's
costs
the water.
$25,000 a week?
That's what he told me.
I don't believe that.
Okay.
What's in the budget this year?
I'm just telling you,
Yeah, okay,
that's
well,
what I
that's
was
fine.
told.
Look, what I'm saying is, I think that part of the way that the city gets better is to make it better for the homeowners, for the people that are there. And for the people that are there, and that includes the streets and includes the code
I
enforcement.
agree with that.
Good. And I think, and that what that takes is to make sure that it's done. And that's where I come in, the oversight. Not to find out the tire pressure on the trucks.
What is the
Tire.
tire pressure, by the way?
Huh?
That keeps coming up.
Yeah, what is that?
I don't know.
Does somebody actually, I mean, are you saying that they do micromanage, or are they?
No, I say I don't
Okay.
know. I'm giving that as an example of micromanagement,
Okay,
which I don't care about.
Well, it could cost money if it's.
right, what if they're
Good.
underinflated?
So-
I have a very specific minor question.
It is warm in here. I see you were falling asleep there.
Very
All right.
specific and minor. St. Luke's, big employer, major contributor to the life of Newburgh.
Big deal.
Alan Azarot was a major force. He left. His successor has left. They're now being part of Montefiore, whatever that means. It is. I'm assuming there's going to be less local control and more distant control of St. Luke's. I know they're saying it's a passive parent relationship now. We know what happens with that. Any sense of whether St. Luke's is going to be able to be a vigorous contributor, participant in what goes on in Newburgh?
Actually, I've had sit-down meetings with the people from Montefiore and
Okay.
from St. Luke's. They came to me when this partnership was first being discussed, and we talked a lot about, what could happen. And so what I'm very well aware of is that the whole medical system is changing all across the state. So I can't say absolutely what's going to happen. I'm not in charge of that. But what was told to me is that St. Luke's felt that they were actually going to be able to give better service. That Montefiore was much more focused on wellness than on illness, and more proactive health programs and teaching people health and keeping people well. So it's more of a wellness program. I really hope that's true, because I would like to see our people have more access to things that will, both training and opportunities to stay healthier. And so from that perspective, and what I've been told is that St. Luke's is going to remain a very active part of our community. So that's where we are right now.
'Cause they obviously have more resources to bring, but they also don't know Newburgh.
Right.
And so will they care, is the question. Okay.
Okay, but that's what I know about that. And also another couple of things that have been brought up here. I'm gotten little notes down here. I want you to know that we have been working also in this economic development, because economic development is a very strong component of what I've been working on. That's what I feel I can do. And so we have brought in about 15 new businesses. Another 3 are scheduled to open in the next 3 months here. In fact, I moved out of my campaign headquarters, the ones that I just had, to make way for a new grocery store that's moving in. And then I thought maybe I'd move next door, and no, that one's been rented as well. And so it's just continues to happen. The big building, the red building that was on 17K, they're renovating that. They have new tenants moving in there now. So we have a lot going on here in terms of economic development, and I want to just make sure that people understand how important it is that we stay the course on that. The other thing that I wanted to tie to that is jobs. So Startup New York, we've been working with very strongly. We've got some new partners coming in with Startup New York. We're working with Mount St. Mary's on that. And they have some new partners that are coming in on Startup New York. And so the jobs issue is very closely tied to that. And one of the things that really helps the crime stats and the safety is getting jobs, right? So if you start working on that, now you've got something really going on. What we've discovered with the governor's initiative, the Core Stat group, is that it isn't about having jobs. It's about matching the skills to the jobs. So we have jobs, they can't find anybody to work for it, and we have people who want jobs, but they don't have the skills to meet that. And so for a while they were doing training, like they turned out 100 people that could do asbestos removal, but there wasn't any asbestos removal going on at the time. So what good did that do? So as we got into this business over in the city council, we actually discovered this about 1.5 years ago, and then I got it into the core group as we talked about it. So now we're identifying the jobs. I've just identified 40 more jobs with the LSI. It's a lighting manufacturing operation. We set up the training. So we need people that have math skills and people who have certain kinds of skills, and we take those people, we put them through a course, and they are guaranteed jobs on the other end. We have another one right now, seamstress. We have 4 jobs guaranteed if people will take the seamstress training and go to the job. So we're identifying what needs to happen with the businesses, what do they need, and now we're partnering that with the training, and that's all coming out of this relationship that we've had on the core initiative.
Well,
I'm gonna let you wrap up.
Well, first, no, let me mention that and then I'll wrap up. On the economic development, I don't think there's been a plus jobs. I mean, and psychologically, losing Key Bank is brutal. And we lost 185 jobs that are moving out from Hudson Valley Lighting. From an article in the paper, it might be a warehouse, it won't be 185 jobs, we don't think, but whatever. Concerning your campaign headquarters, which was owned by one of the major landlords, Carchetta, you weren't paying rent there, were you?
Huh?
You weren't paying rent for your first
Are
headquarters.
you paying rent?
Yes, $700 a month. It's in my reports.
Good.
You weren't paying anything.
And by the way, that does not just belong to Carchetta, that belongs to Vinnie Capoletti. So
Vinnie
let's get
Capoletti, excuse me, I made a mistake. But you weren't paying rent to him either.
Are
Okay?
you accusing her of being, I don't know.
In bed with the
Yeah, I mean,
developer
you're
now?
making allegations that she somehow is doing something immoral or illegal. Are you actually, I mean,
I think
keep hinting.
I think it's improper to get free rent from somebody that's a major land.
So where do you draw the line on campaign contributions? Because you clearly don't want to take any.
Right, from people.
But you say you've endorsed by Sean Maloney, he'll take money from any Wall Street guy who'll give it to him. Do you criticize him for taking money too?
I'm running my campaign.
No, you're talking about campaign contributions as if they're evil. I'm just wondering how far you go on that.
Well, I think it makes a difference depending on the size of the campaign. I mean, if you're raising $2 million and you get $2,500 from somebody, it's a lot different than if you're getting a campaign that's going to cost you $20,000, you get $2,500 or $2,000 from somebody.
You can be bought.
Some can. I can't.
Can she be bought?
I don't know. Let's put it this way. I know that I can't be bought. I know that the policies reflect her donations in the past and people that she has
Policies
relationship.
do not reflect anything with my donations.
Okay, fine.
Absolutely nothing.
Then the lack of code enforcement, then that's been all on your
That
own
is-
and
that
what you
is
want to
your
have.
little
So it's
pet
all right.
story.
So it isn't related to your code. It isn't
It has
related.
nothing to do with me.
Okay, huh?
It has nothing to do with my campaign contributions.
Fine, then it does with your lack of commitment for code enforcement. That's fine. So then it isn't due to the money. That's just you. You were like that before and it's not influencing you. Fine.
I'm curious, where would you draw the line on campaign contributions? I mean,
Well,
Napoli wants the public funding. You know, do we need to go to public funding of all campaigns?
Well, I don't know if the city could afford that. I'm being realistic.
I do.
think you can do it on the state. But I'll just quote maybe a few editorials that were in the record about pay to play. Okay? That's what I'm saying. So I think there should be consistency there.
Okay, let's wrap up.
Okay. All right. I believe Newburgh can do better. That's why I'm running. I'm not running because I need a job or I need health insurance. I have a job, I have health insurance. I'm running because I believe Newburgh can do better. I believe that Newburgh, in order to promote itself properly, in order to get a proper economic future, has to get its act together. And I've said this from the beginning, that what we have to do is enforce the building code, pave the streets, and keep taxes stable. If we don't enforce the building code, it's going to make it impossible to sell the houses, particularly the ones that the city owns, to improve that. If we don't pave the streets, it's going to be hard to get developers who break a front axle on the way to the site. And if we don't keep taxes stable, we're going to be all running to the hills. I think that what we have to do is there has to be a different commitment from the council to make sure that this is done. And there has to be a commitment to make sure it's done, and with the basic oversight of any legislative body, all right? And then if we do that, I have short-term and long-term plans on economic development. On the short term, we have to get transportation to the jobs that exist outside the area, and there's been trying to do that. There's been, we have to get the training, we have to work more long-term. We work with the businesses and the Startup New York and those things, get an incubator in here that's promoted properly and done right, and to bring that together. We have to fight every day illegal guns and gun violence. That's something that I will use as a bully pulpit, and that I will promote that, and it has to be done. And I also think that because of my background in politics, I can do more. Newburgh can do better, and I can do more.
Okay.
I can do more with that. And I think that I don't have the ethical conflicts that that the incumbent has concerning her lack of commitment to doing these things, and I think that we can do better.
Okay. I have a vision for Newburgh, and when I came in, it's still the same vision. I see a prosperous Broadway with businesses there. I see the River Street with new buildings on it, mixed-use apartments and businesses down there as we draw the money up from the waterfront and we start building the city back up the hill. I've had that vision from the beginning, and I still have it. And I think that we're going to get there by staying the course with making the city safer, by cleaning it up both building-wise and street-wise, and by focusing on economic development. Building on the campaign for Newburgh for newcomers, the River of Opportunities. I think you've all heard about the River of Opportunities, continuing that campaign for use of our warehouses and continuing to all of the things that we're doing to make it safe. So making it safe is key to this situation. And as we continue to work with our police department, community policing, police on the street, police out getting the training. By the way, they're getting training now on mental health and dealing with people with mental health issues. As we continue to work with our people, collaboration, teamwork, working across party lines, working with everybody, our nonprofits, our state government. I have excellent working relationship with everybody at the state. They invite me up all the time. I am always talking to these folks. And so in terms of those relationships, it works with relationships. As far as relationship building, that's probably one of my key strengths, is I am very good at creating relationships across all working organizations. In terms of ethics, I stand on my ethical ground as strong as anybody I know. There's one thing I've said, and I've said it from the beginning: I can't be bought, and I won't be. And It hasn't happened. I don't care who donates to me on what. We are focused on building this city and moving forward. That's it. That's it. And that is, I think we're on the right track. We need to stay the course, create stability in this city. We've started turning City Hall around. As far as commitment, I don't think anybody gets more committed than donating 35 to 45 hours a week on my salary.
Great. Both of you, I thank you, Mayor.
Thank you both.
Thank you very much for coming in. Appreciate that very